This week, the leadership of Jesus. Question, who's leading you? There are so many books on leadership, but let's remember we need to start to understand that we must be led by the leader of leaders. We are going through Luke chapter 5, this amazing encounter when Jesus first calls his disciples. And so far in Luke chapter 5, we found Jesus was teaching to the crowd. He intentionally chooses the boat of Peter because he's about to change Peter's life. And we pray he's changing our lives right now too. We have learned thus far in this text, Jesus has such interest in us as the leader of our lives. Jesus is so intentional with his leadership. And Jesus desires intimacy with us too. Isn't that amazing? The Lord of the universe wants to be so intimate with you and I as he leads us on a daily basis. So we have this setting, and then we find in Luke chapter 5, verse 4, I want to read it for us here. It says this, "And when he, Jesus, had finished speaking, he said to Simon," now watch the leadership of Jesus here, "Put out into the deep and let your nets for a catch." But Simon answered, remember this, Jesus is the carpenter and Peter's the fisherman. But Jesus now in his leadership starts instructing Peter how to fish. Now notice the response of Peter. Peter says this, Simon says this, "Master, we toiled all night and took nothing, but at your word I will let down the nets." Notice the first half of that. Master, we toiled all night and took nothing. Let's just break down that phrase here right now as we see Peter's response to Jesus. Peter says, "Master," in other words, with all due respect, sir, right? He says, "We toiled." In other words, I'm exhausted. I'm so tired. I don't really feel like fishing anymore. We've done that all night. He says again, all night. Why? Why'd they fish all night? That's the best time to fish in this context, was to be in the night. But here is Jesus again as the woodworker. He's instructing the fishermen on how to fish. And so Peter says to him, he says again, "Listen, I don't really know why you're asking me to do this, because I'm the one who thinks I know again what's supposed to happen with the fishing." But then Jesus again instructs him, because what is Jesus looking for? And here's one of the first main lessons we find as we take up the leadership of Jesus upon our lives. Jesus is looking for faith. Jesus is wanting to see, "Peter, this is not what you expected me to say, but do you trust me?" Jesus says that to you and I right now. When he leads us, one of the foremost things he does, he says, "Hey, do you trust me? When things don't seem to be going the way that we thought? When you're maybe asking me to do something I don't feel like doing? Are you going to trust your ways, Robbie?" Or Jesus says, "But are you going to trust my ways? Are you going to trust that the ways of God are not the ways of man?" Sometimes we say to Jesus too, don't we? Like, "I'm so tired. We've worked all night. I'm exhausted. We've had no success. Why would I do that again, Jesus, in our own circumstances?" But Jesus isn't concerned about what we see as our drawing conclusions. Jesus wants to know, will we respond in obedience to what he's asked us to do? And that's one of the fundamental things we see right here as Jesus calls his first disciples. He's looking for men and women of faith, that we would ultimately respond to Jesus and say, "I'm tired, I don't get it, but listen, but at your word, I will let down my nets." And that's such a beautiful response that Peter gives, and we're going to unpack that more this week as we come up. But right now, if Jesus is leading you, he's asking you for your faith. Faith for your future, faith for your friends, faith for your family, faith for forgiveness in Jesus Christ. 1-866-273-4444. Call us right now to see faith grow in your life.